Does it take a village to raise a child, or is it the parent's responsibility? The essence of this question is being asked by a group of Montgomery County parents who have petitioned the United States Supreme Court to allow them to opt out when LGBTQ plus storybooks are used in Montgomery County public school classrooms. The focus of this case began in the 22-23 school year when MCPS sought to introduce 7 books in the lower grades that supported the LGBTQ movement, not only in sex education classes, but also in general literature classes. When parents objected, MCPS in March of 23 announced that opt-outs would no longer be allowed for this subject. This action sparked the series of litigation that now spreads to the doorsteps of the Supreme Court. Nancy, the court is not being asked to rule on the merits of the case, but it's a procedural issue whether parents were entitled to injunction. But going back to what MCPS did in 2023, isn't there an action against parents' rights? Don't they have the right to determine what their children are seeing and not seeing?
Well, as I understand it, right now this is an appeal from a decision by the Federal Court of Appeals. So that's what's positioned it where it is. What the court found that there was no burden on their right to exercise religion, and there was no demonstrated link really on how the teachers were using this material. As it was, the state had told the school districts in the state throughout the state not to permit opt-outs. So it's really not Montgomery County's fault under any scenario. They're just following what the State Board of Education told them to do.
Stacey, Nancy mentioned the Federal Court of Appeals case. It wasn't a unanimous opinion. It was a 2-1 decision. And the circuit judge, A. Marvin Quattlebaum, wrote that parents have shown the board's decision to deny religious opt-outs burden these parents' rights to exercise their religious beliefs and direct religious upbringing of their children by putting them to the choice of either compromising their religious beliefs or foregoing a public education for the children. Shouldn't parents be allowed the opportunity to opt out if it's offensive to them on religious grounds?
Casey, it's an interesting question because to me, the answer is both objective and subjective. And it's like Justice Potter Stewart, his definition of pornography. Remember, you know it when you see it, right? And from an objective viewpoint, a major component of gender identity involves sexuality, right? And of which I presume most of these very young children are pretty clueless. So theoretically, you're introducing sex into the curriculum with these books, and the parents know it when they see it. From a subjective religious perspective, I think many parents are voicing strong moral and, clear objections because the material just does not sync with their values. So either let the curriculum go for these younger kids or let the parents who pay their salaries, by the way, opt out. I will say, having said that I do believe it's important to teach young kids that parents come in all kinds of packages and, without getting into sexuality per se. And by this, I mean, I don't have any objection to children being taught that some kids are raised by their grandparents, 2 dads, 2 moms, a guardian, whatever. But I think that provides kind of a sense of inclusion for some kids who aren't being raised in a traditional role or mold. But when it's age appropriate, then perhaps you introduce the concepts of sexual attraction apart from sex or procreation itself. So the bottom line for me is that I do clearly believe that parents have the right to opt out, and those accommodations should be made. So I can't handicap how the court will treat this. Nancy made some strong points about the state board, but we're here in Montgomery County paying with our property taxes, et cetera, to support this school system. We should have a right.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, the coalition of individuals that have brought this case. It's not just one religious sect. It's many that have brought it. And so at this stage, we haven't even gotten to whether or not the merits of the case are being discussed. It's really a procedural issue, whether they're entitled to a permanent injunction, that there's such a great harm that has been raised at this juncture that they're seeking the injunction for. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see if the court even takes this case up. But ultimately, it'll go back to the circuit court for a decision as to whether or not the merits of the case are appropriate. And Nancy, you could be very right. It could be that they will lose on standing grounds because it's the State Board of Education that they should have sued, and not just Montgomery County. So, any last comments?
Casey, I think personally that you're going to be hitting on several topics today that actually involve parents' rights. And so we're hearing them speak up louder and more clearly about what they deem is appropriate for their children.